Hello, and welcome to another episode of LRR. But this time I am in a different kind of location because I am here in behind the control computer of Studio A, which I've had to do every time we've talked about this I've like tweeted about this or mentioned it. I've had to be like, it's in Studio A, also known as the AFK studio and the podcasting studio and the Tinker Tailor studio and the Checkpoint studio and the Sidewalk Slam studio. I guess that's part of podcasting. So yeah, we do a lot of different stuff. Let me just move this a little bit closer to me. Hey. So yeah, we've got, for those of you who don't know, I think we've talked about it in AFK, or in loading time stuff, but for those of you who don't know, here in the Moonbase Mark IV, we have two studios beside each other. We've got Studio A and Studio B, we call them. Also like podcasting and streaming studio, even though, of course, we stream from this studio. My hope is that eventually we're going to have, we can get pictures on the door so that Studio B will have like a picture of a bee on it, possibly a picture of beige. So it'll be like Studio B, and then Studio A will have a picture of the fawns going A on it. So it'll be Studio A and Studio B. That's my hope anyway. Yes, this is also where the pre-release takes place, or did take place, and will take place in the future, all going according to plan. So, today I'm going to be, 2 weeks ago, around this time, I gave the full rundown of Studio A, or Studio B, see, even I mess it up, which hopefully was interesting to some people, and during that, I mentioned that I would try to do the rundown for Studio A as well. Now, Studio A is not as, in some ways, it's not as complex as the rundown for Studio B. And in some ways, it's more complex, but it's sort of differently complex. The big thing with Studio A is that we've got it sort of has to be reconfigurable. As I just mentioned, we have podcasts. We've got Tinker Tailor. We've got AFK stuff, and for AFK stuff, obviously, depending on what we're playing, what configuration we need in terms of cameras changes a lot. If we're playing Magic, there's one configuration, or if we're playing a board game, there's another configuration. If we're playing, some other card game or something, there's all sorts of different ways that we can utilize the studio so that hopefully so that we can have it for maximum things. So the diagram that I posted there, that I'll just throw up in a minute, is what I would call sort of a maximum configuration for the studio. Obviously, when we're just doing like a tap concede, we don't have all of that stuff running all at once because we don't need it. Tap concede is relatively simple. But for something like, say, the pre-release, we had basically all of those cameras and all of those systems running at the same time. So it just depends on what we're doing. Let me let me switch over to the diagram. Boop. All right, so this is the diagram that I posted. I'm covering the little thing that shows what things mean, but hopefully that's not too important. As you can see, the big thing with this Studio A, is that the Studio A computer, which is the computer I'm on right now, and the computer that does all the streaming for Studio A, is a workhorse. And it's got a lot of stuff going through it. In fact, I think this computer is the most connected computer I think I've ever seen. In fact, let me. I'll show you it in a sec. But the ports, like on the back of this computer, are as full as I have ever seen a computer, other than like the PS2 port and I think the VGA port. Although, and sometimes we have used the VGA port. Basically, every port on the back of this computer is filled, which is fairly impressive, I think. So the big differences between this setup and the one in the streaming office, aka Studio B, is that unlike the streaming office where we have, we've got a ton of different consoles and the gaming PC and all that stuff coming into that computer. But they're all going through an HDMI switch, and there's only actually one or sometimes two of them on screen at once. Whereas, if you can see for this one, this system is actually running. The computer here is actually taking in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 camera inputs all at once, and can actually utilize all 7 camera inputs. And how it does that is, right here, you can see this computer has 3 capture cards in it, a total of 3 capture cards. It has a Blackmagic Intensity capture card, which is an HDMI capture card. It can also do compositing component, but we don't use it for that on this computer. It has a AverMedia Live Gamer, which is also an HDMI capture card. And then it has the Blackmagic Decklink Duo, which is an SDI capture card. Now, for those of you who don't know, so HDMI, of course, everybody knows. SDI is a little bit less common. And for those of you who don't know what it is, SDI is a more, what I guess would call like a more sort of pro level video interface. It's generally used on higher end cameras, and higher end capture cards and stuff, and or switchers and things. And it tends to be more expensive. Like the Decklink Duo capture card is quite a bit more expensive than a intensity card. The reason why we have it is we got it for Desert Bus actually a few years ago, and it turned out to be quite useful, so we kept it. So, and that card actually has 2 SDI ports on that one card. That's why it's a Decklink Duo. And then we also have the AF100 cameras are more sort of, I guess, pro-level cameras, and so they've got the SDI outputs on them. And the cool thing about SDI as a format, it's a great format. It's a great way to transmit an audio or a video signal, because it's transmitting it over sort of a coaxial cable. So for those of you who don't know, obviously there's all sorts of different cables that you can send things through. An HDMI cable, has like the end on it with a whole bunch of little wires coming out and stuff. A coaxial cable just has one wire. It's got one wire going through the middle with shielding and stuff. And so if you've got like if you've got cable TV or a cable modem or whatever, the thing that plugs into your cable modem, that's coaxial cable. And so what's great about that is it's like super common cable. It's been around for many, many years, and it's really cheap. Now, SDI requires, a high quality coaxial cable. But what's awesome about it, but because it is using a sort of commodity part, it means that it's the cable, once you actually have the interfaces, which tend to be more expensive, the actual cabling connecting them can actually be quite cheap. And can run, the big advantage of it is it can run over longer distances than HDMI typically can. Now, HDMI has, because it's so, it has had some innovations in terms of using fiber optics and using boosters and active stuff to make it so you can run longer runs. But typically HDMI is limited to about 100 feet. Once you get close to 100 feet and once you get over 100 feet, HDMI starts getting really tricky. Again, there's fiber optic HDMI and different stuff like that, but generally you don't want to go over 100 feet on an HDMI cable, and even 100 feet can be a little bit tricky. Whereas a SDI cable, you can go, I think you can go up to, even with just like commodity SDI cable, you can go to like 300 feet. And if you start getting into specialized stuff, you can go 700 feet, you can do really great stuff. So when we do Loading Ready Live, at the beginning of Loading Ready Live, that starts in the sort of front area of the moon base, and then we do that whole walkthrough at the beginning where we show what's going on, and then it comes back to me. The reason why we can do that is Heather's running the camera there, hooked up to a 100-foot long SDI cable, and it's comparatively easy for it to run, whereas an HDMI cable of equivalent length and quality would be very thick or very expensive. So that's one of the big advantages of the SDI technology. Again, less good because the actual like in order to get a camera that has that capability, you're generally going into the more either prosumer or professional level cameras. So automatically it's going to get more expensive, and same with the capture cards or different stuff. So anyway, very cool stuff. All right, so we've got all these different cameras coming in, and then we also have all these different audio sources. Of course, so again, in the streaming office, we've got the audio, from the console or the video game, the video game or the stream PC or whatever, and then we have the microphone of the person playing. Occasionally, we have two microphones if there are a lot of people playing or whatever. Whereas here in the podcasting studio or whatever, we often have four people talking that we want to talk about, or we have four people talking plus we've got the control computer, which is what this microphone here is for. We've got lapel mics, which is what I'm using right now to talk, or we've got the room mics, which are those Rode NTG2s, which we talked about in the previous one. So in order to run all of those microphones all at the same time, we need a little bit heavier duty mixing board. So the mixing board that we have in the streaming office is fine. It's nothing special. It's a Behringer Xenix 1208, I believe. You can look at the other one for that. But the mixing board we have here is a little bit more fancy. And let me actually switch over to one of the other cameras that we've got here, which is the webcam. And I can show you. So I'm talking about this right here, this big mixing board. Boop. Here we go. So this is the mixing board that we use. The Behringer, the Allen & Heath Z14 mixing board, and it's really nice. this, unlike the mixing board next door was, we figured we needed a mixing board. We went to the office, or we went to the store and we got a mixing board that seemed to approximate our needs. This one, this board was actually recommended to us by an audio tech that we were working with, so in general, it seems to be, I think it's a higher quality board, and it has served us very well. We've used this for Desert Bus for a number of years, and we've done all sorts of great stuff with it. And as you can see here, it's got 6 XLR inputs, so it can take like 4, 4 lapel mics, 2 room mics, or 4 lapel mics, and the SM58 control mic. And then it can also take these, what are called the line inputs or whatever, so you can do stuff like from another computer or something like that. And you can mess with different, and you have all sorts of options to control different stuff. Also, and unlike the other board, it doesn't have like special effects or anything like that. It's what you would call, I guess we call it a more like serious board. How many of those dials do we actually use? Most of them. The dials that are all the one of the things that we found is that especially the equalization dials. So these. Let me turn this around the right way. These ones up here, which is like the high, medium, and low frequency. Notice that all the low frequencies are turned up slightly on the first 4. Those are for the lapel mics, and we found that giving the low frequencies a little bit of a boost helps give it, helps people sound a little bit better, not sound so tinny. And if you notice, number 5 here, the low frequency is jacked all the way up. And the reason why the low frequency is jacked all the way up on number 5 is that the last time we used the 5th channel was when we were doing the what was it? Oh, we were doing when we were doing Living Ray Live with the when people were doing the PowerPoint karaoke with the headset mic. And those headset mics, Shure headset mics are good quality microphones, but we've found that they really help with. They tend to have a slightly kind of tinny effect to them, and over some experience, we found that in order to make them sound as good as possible, you really got to up the bass, and you don't cut the mid-range, and you don't drop the bass. You have to keep the mid-range and then up the bass. And so that's what we found anyway. So if you if you look back at the podcast where we first started using those microphones, it sounds kind of tinny, whereas like the second or third podcast we're using those microphones sounds a lot better because we jacked up the bass on it. Now, I don't know if that's maybe that we messed up, but I don't know if there's a way that could be configured so we wouldn't need to be jacked up that high, but that's where we are. At the moment, I see somebody asking about the auxiliary outputs of the board. At the moment, we don't really use the auxiliary outputs for anything. We have used them in the past for what's called a mix minus, which is where you have like only some signals coming out. Actually, we are using the auxiliary outputs because to choose what sounds go from the board into the computer. So we don't necessarily want everything that comes into the board to come into the computer. Like for instance, in order for me to hear what the computer is hearing. Obviously we're getting more and more technical here, but I'm hoping that that's why you came, because you want to hear technical stuff. So this last row, the auxiliary 4, you can see auxiliary 3 and 4 are turned up all the way, all the way, all the way, whereas these ones are turned all the way down. The reason for that is and you can see, let's see here. See the USB output there, and the auxiliary 3 and 4 is what's coming out of the board. So basically, what we have it set is that the auxiliary 3 and 4 is actually what's coming out of the board into the computer, and that's what you're hearing when you're hearing my microphones and all the different things. And what that means is that I can then have the audio from the computer. So like if the computer's playing a video, or the computer's playing like the notifier or whatever, I can have the audio from the computer coming back into the board so I can hear it. But because it's and that's all coming into, you see, that's the audio from the computer there, and so that's coming into this channel, and which is currently muted because there's no audio playing. But if I unmute that, it means I can hear any sounds the computer makes. So I can hear the notifier, I can hear movies playing and that kind of stuff. But because the levels are turned down on it, that doesn't play back through the computer, and then you have an infinite loop, which is bad. Or not an infinite loop, actually. It would just be an echo, which would be not so good. So that's the main part of the audio. The other part, though, is that now in this diagram, I had a little bit of trouble actually representing how this actually works in the diagram here, but I hope if you understand how a compressor operates, hopefully this makes sense. So this guy here, this compressor is a relatively recent addition to our system. I mean, it's not that recent. It's probably 8 or 9 months old now. Well, I'm almost a year old now. But that was a change we made to enhance the audio. The Behringer board we have in the streaming office has what's called a sort of an onboard compressor. It's got basically just a knob that you turn to say, I want this compressed more or less. And for those of you who don't know, compression, what compression does is why it's called compression, because it's something that is applied to the audio signal as it comes in to compress the waveform or the audio, the levels. So basically, it means that anything really quiet becomes louder, anything really loud becomes quieter. So, for instance, that means that in the streaming office, that means that when Adam does like a sub, a sub notification or thank you or whatever, and shouts at the stream, it doesn't completely blow the levels. It does a little bit, but if you were watching the streams before we activated our compression system and stuff, you'll know what that was like before. So for instance, if Cam is talking and he's talking really quietly, it'll bring up his volume. And if somebody's talking really loudly, it'll bring down their volume. So the idea with a compressor is it makes people sound more in the same range in terms of audio levels, which is, especially if you're doing like spoken word stuff, is very good. and this box here, this box also does stuff like so. This is a combination compressor, expander, gate, and limiter. A lot of those functions are acting kind of similar. And frankly, I'm not really an expert on any of this kind of stuff. I've sort of learned on the job, so I'm not the best one to explain it probably. But so compressor is where you keep the volume, make sure the volume is all in one area. So the two most important ones are the compressor, and the gate. And what a gate does is it makes it so that so that there's if the audio that's coming in is below a certain volume, it cuts it completely. And so what that means is that, like, if there's background noise, so you have like there's what's called room hum or room noise that can be annoying. The gate will cut that out completely until someone starts talking. And so that will make things a lot cleaner. Actually, here, let me demonstrate it. So right now I'm talking on a lapel mic that has the gating turned on. If I go in here, I'm just going to bypass the compressor on this lapel mic. So notice how I'm talking. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. I'm talking right now. This is my normal voice. And whenever I stop talking, it's totally silent, right? So what happens if I turn off the gating? All right, so now I've bypassed the compressor completely, and you can hear that I sound a little bit louder. My voice is a little bit more, I guess, dynamically louder and quieter. But also, if I stop talking, there's still that like hum in the room, and which is kind of annoying. So that's what the gating does. Is it makes it so that when you aren't talking, it's totally quiet. Yeah, there's sort of a buzz in the room. So I'll turn that back on. Now, the big trick. The big trick with the compressor, though, is it does require some a fair amount of tweaking, I guess, configuration, because you have to obviously make sure that the settings are correct when you're doing it, so that the gate, if you turn the gating up too high, then it won't actually let it'll be your voice will cut out too quickly, right? So you'll only actually hear it when the person is shouting, and if the gating is too low, then it won't cut out. It won't actually start gating it ever. If the compression is too high, then you won't have any vocal dynamics at all, that kind of stuff. So you can really a compressor can make things sound a lot worse if you're not careful. And the other thing is the type of microphone that's going into the compressor will require different settings, right? So that's why. So we've got the compressor that we have is a 4-channel compressor, and if you notice, by coincidence, well, not coincidence, by planning, we have 4 lapel mics, and so the compressor is designed. The way we've configured the compressor is for those lapel mics. So that's why, like when somebody's using someone's using the headset microphone, or somebody's using the SM58, or we're using the room microphones or whatever, we'll usually put them into the channels 5 and 6, or we'll put them into the channels 1, 2, 3, 4, but we'll bypass the compressor before we do it. So so we have a 4-channel compressor. I mean, theoretically, you would want a compressor that has as many channels as your board, so that any channel could be compressed. but that's not what we've got. Obviously, the more channels you get in your compressor, the more expensive it gets, and blah, blah, blah. I'll show you what it looks like, by the way. Here, let me switch over to this camera again. So obviously the desk, right? The desk that I'm sitting at here is fairly small. I think you've seen it in behind the scenes stuff and things. And so we don't really have room for the compressor on the desk, and we don't have enough room for the compressor on the desk, but we don't have enough stuff that we need like a full rack. And so we came up with the solution that the compressor is actually mounted on the front of the desk. So here's the board. And here's the compressor. So it's actually mounted right on the front of the desk. And despite what it shows in the diagram here, where it's sort of the microphones going into the compressor and then going into the mixing board, that's sort of conceptually what's happening. Physically what's happening, for those of you who know how mixing boards work and our audio things, you'll understand this. But actually what's happening is on every channel, so if we go here, so here are the XLR inputs for the different microphones. And then here, these are what are called insert channels. So and you notice there's only 1, 2, 3, 4. The other channels do not have these. And what these are is they are basically, they're designed for exactly for this, for compression or for special effects and stuff. It basically sends the signal from the microphone or whatever your input is. It sends it out to something, and then it comes back into here. So it's sort of a loop back interface. And then these, go down and, can you see that? Plug into the bottom of there. Sorry, it's kind of dark down there. So that's the general idea behind this system. Like I said, I'm not an expert by any means on audio stuff, and it's something that has just been figured out over time. But hopefully, yes, that is not a steady cam. Hopefully, it has started, since we've been experimenting with this stuff, it started to sound better, I would hope. So yeah, that's, as I talked about this in the previous video about, I talked about this in the previous video about the different microphones that we use for different circumstances. So I won't go into it too much. But basically, we've got the lapel mics, which you try to use as much as possible because they're a great way of doing it. They're not as they're more direct than just having like a room microphone, but they're also but they're less sort of obtrusive than having one of these in everybody's face or having to hold it or whatever. These microphones though are nice for the control computer is where we have these usually, where somebody is where I can just kind of lean over and talk into it. I don't have to be like wired up to the whole thing. So let me just switch over to this microphone. And you can hear what this sounds. I mean, these microphones are really, really good. This is the SM58. This is the industry standard for this type of microphone. And what's neat is that even though it's the industry standard, they're actually not that expensive. They're only they're like $100 or so each, which as these as these things go, is pretty reasonable. In fact, I was just actually watching. I was just watching. If you've got Netflix, sorry, slight digression. If you've got Netflix, you should definitely check out the Roger Waters' The Wall. You should know that Pink Floyd, The Wall, absolutely, totally wonderful musical piece, sound or album, whatever, concert, and the Roger Waters' The Wall is a new version of that came out that he did in 2014, I think, and it's an absolutely amazing production. It's the most. I think it's one of the largest productions ever put on as a touring production. There's something like 36 high definition projectors projecting onto the wall, backlit stuff. It's insane. Definitely check it out. It's obviously it's an amazing, it's an amazing album, amazing concert. But for me, from like a technical perspective, it's absolutely incredible as well. But in addition to that, one of the things I was reading about, some of the background info in this multi-million-dollar production, I think it was something like $69 or $70 million for this production. Roger Waters, the main guy singing, is singing on one of these. He's using an SM58 because it's just what everyone uses, and it's what he wanted to use. So there you go. That's what you want to do. But yeah, if you're interested in extreme extreme tech stuff, check out that. I think there's an article on it on Sound on Sound, just going through detail some of the stuff. It's pretty insane. Anyway, let me switch back to the other microphone. All right, back to my lapel mic. Do you know the Behringer X18? I do not. I don't have. All right. So let me see here. What are we going to do now? Okay, so I think that's basically all I wanted to do. All I wanted to talk about in terms of the audio. So obviously, and again, just like the video setup, with different cameras and stuff, the audio setup will change depending on what we're doing. If there's only 3 people talking, then obviously we don't need all the lapel mics. If there's 5 people, then we'll do the lapel mics and then one headset mic or lapel mic and one of these SM58s. If there's even more people than that, then we'll do room mics, which obviously are not totally ideal, but can work. We use those Rode NTG2s, which is the same microphone that we use as for all our video shooting and that kind of stuff. What kind of mic would you recommend for recording ambient nature sounds? That Rode NG2 is great. I don't have, a ton of experience with different microphones, and I don't know if I have a good enough ear really to hear the sophisticated stuff. But it's a great microphone. I would recommend it. Did you use a certain program for these schematics? Yes, it's called Illustrator, and I used that for 2 reasons. One, I couldn't find an easy program to do it with that was free. Like I think there's like Microsoft Visio or something that's like a professional level program, but considering that this was like the only two diagrams I would want to make. I didn't need it. And Illustrator I have a lot of experience with. So rather than learning a whole new program that would theoretically be better for this, but I just did it in Illustrator, which is obviously not an ideal program for it, but it works. It just is not so good in terms of, you know, if you move something, you have to then rearrange everything. It's not so good about like auto fixing things. And I had to get my own icons and things. It didn't come with that. All right, so now that we've talked about audio, let's talk about video. So, so the audio is sort of this stuff here, everything on that side of the screen, or everything on that side of the thing, whereas video is everything on the left-hand side. And our video setup obviously has changed over the years, and it's a lot of it, you know, these aren't necessarily, the different cameras and things we use aren't necessarily what I would say the absolute best for the job in every circumstance, although they do have, although they're pretty much what we need. But in most cases they weren't actually bought specifically for whatever job that they're currently doing. So for instance, the AF100s were our production cameras up until recently, and then they were replaced. The AF100s were replaced by the Canon C100, which is our main production camera currently. So obviously we don't use it for streaming if we have to film something at the same time. This overhead camera is the only camera that we actually bought specifically for its job. So that camera was designed to be the we bought that camera specifically to be the overhead camera, and basically because it had it came highly recommended as like a handy cam. It was fairly inexpensive. I think it's about $600, and it's got, you know, good quality video, good zoom, that kind of stuff. For the actual interface on the camera is not very good. I would not recommend. I would not recommend this camera, this Panasonic camera, as just a general go-to camera to get. While the video output on it is very high quality and stuff, its UI is not very good. Everything is touchscreen based. Like there's very few actual like outside knobs on it, which I guess is pretty standard for consumer level stuff, but it makes it quite difficult to do any adjustments if you want to do stuff on the fly. But for our purposes, for an overhead camera, it works out quite nicely. Let me switch to some different cameras so you can see what's going on here. So for instance, for this camera that you're looking at right here, sorry, one sec. There, hopefully that'll be better. The other thing you got to worry about with these is that it, you know, rubbing against your shirt and stuff. So there's this camera, which is the this is the AF100. Normally, obviously, wouldn't be pointed at me because, you know, normally you don't have a computer pointed at the control person, but in this case, we do. Normally, this would be one of the wide shots. Then we have the AF100, which is pointed at the room here. I'm just going to stand up here and take off my headphones, which I've done that one a few times. Not taking off my headphones, I mean. So, yes, wait, let me stand back here. So yeah, you've got this one, which is a fairly wide shot. One thing with the AF100 cameras is they run on their what's called micro four thirds, that's just the capture technology they use, which is sort of a halfway, or it's sort of a relatively new lens system, which is okay. It's pretty good, and it allows you to have interchangeable lenses and stuff. But the frame size on it, the actual like capture area on it, is relatively small in comparison to some other systems, and so it means that because the frame size is smaller, getting it to view a really wide amount of the screen or of the view, like a really wide angle shot, can be quite difficult. And so usually when we're doing a wide angle shot, we'll have we'll use the other camera, which is the C100, which is this one here. So this is the C100. In this case, it does have a wide angle lens on it, but a wide angle lens for the C100 is much wider than a wide angle lens for the AF100, or cheaper, depending on what you mean, by what definitions you're looking at things. So that's so usually when we're doing wide stuff, we'll be using the AF100 or the C100, and then the AF100s are better for close stuff. We also have a zoom lens for the AF100 that we use for Tinker Tailor, which is quite nice. Now, let me see here. Go back to the diagram here. The iPad is not dead. The iPad is fine. It's just an iPad 1 that on the mount for the teleprompter, and it is not currently in use, so it's a little sad. It's having a little nap. Yeah, exactly. So that's those three cameras there. We also have these the two Microsoft LifeCam cameras, and the LifeCam cameras, including this one. Woo! These cameras are the ones we use for sort of detail stuff. So we'll use it for like the draft cameras. We'll use it for like the hand shot, or for like the what do you call it? Sort of board level shot, like for HeroQuest or whatever. We'll use those. These Microsoft LifeCams, they're quite nice. These are actually cameras for that Ian actually had. He acquired a couple of them. The place where he worked was getting rid of them, was selling them, and so he got a bunch. He got, I think, 3 or 4 of them for fairly inexpensive, and so so these are what we're using right now. They are only 720 resolution, which obviously is not ideal. But the color quality on them is really good. We have obviously the camera, the webcam that's in the streaming office is the best webcam, but we don't want to have to keep moving that in and out. And maybe we might get a couple more of those ones what's it, C920 Logitechs. We might get some more of those. But for the moment, these ones work quite well. And the color quality on them, which is the big thing that is important, is really nice. So even though they are only 720p and not 1080, they are much better quality than some of the 1080 cameras that you can get. So you know whereas a 1080 camera will like the color will be like really contrasty and won't really pick up stuff that well. So I saw someone asking about GoPros. We do have a couple of GoPros here in the office. We've got two, I think, a GoPro 2 and a GoPro 3, which we've used on various occasions. You've probably seen it in loading times and stuff. The problem with GoPros, for our purposes, is like the reason why we use the webcams is that they're USB, right? So because we're already using all of our capture cards for the other cameras. And so them being USB means we don't need another capture thing, whereas GoPros are the output on a GoPro is HDMI, so we would need more capture cards for those, which is not helpful for what we want. Those are the main, I guess what you call room cameras. We also have as you know from watching streams and stuff, or watching our magic streams and things, we also have the overhead cameras. Let me just tilt up the wide camera here. And you can see our overhead camera situation, which is much better than it was a little while ago. I think James posted a picture of it on Instagram or Twitter or something, but this is our new overhead camera rig we have here. So this here is the overhead camera that we use, and you can see it here. This is the view that has. Obviously, normally for a magic stream, it would be zoomed in more, so it can, and it's quite good quality. It's got autofocus, all that good stuff, and you can it has adjustments on the up by the ceiling here. There's sort of a ball joint and stuff, so it can be tilted around. Usually I get Graham or James or Ian or somebody tall to do it, or I have to get a ladder because I'm not short, but short in relation to the rest of the Loading Ready Run crew. And then here we've got the card recognition camera, which is the T2i. And the reason why we use the T2i is mainly because it's got this. So this camera is great, but this camera is fine. And obviously for the card recognition, it doesn't have to be super high resolution. So we could use like a webcam for it. But the problem with the webcam is webcams don't generally have a optical zoom on them. They'll have digital zoom, but it won't be very high quality. And so this camera, this T2i, is sort of an old camera. It used to be a production camera, 4 or 5 years ago, but it has since been superseded by other stuff, so we don't use it anymore. So I was like, hey, I'm going to snag that. And it's got this nice zoom lens on it because it is basically effectively a still camera. It's got video capabilities, but it's effectively a still camera. And so that camera is zoomed in, so it's very close. So you can see here, this is zoomed in on the table. There's a couple of magic cards here. And if I move this, into the card recognition area. Boom! There. I currently have the card recognition system running right now, which, in addition to the 7 camera inputs, is the other thing that this computer is running. The lens that's on there is just the kit. It's actually just, I think it's just the kit lens that came with that camera. No, it's not the kit lens. It's a bit of more of a zoom. I don't know offhand. I'll have to read it. Oh, you're getting double echo? Oh, pooper. Sorry about that. Oh, right, of course. That's you're probably not getting echo anymore. Sorry about that. Always got to remember that you got to remember that because we're using onboard audio, or we're using the audio from the board and stuff, we have to make sure that the audio from the actual cameras is always muted, because if the audio from the cameras is on, then the camera has a built-in microphone that'll pick stuff up. So sorry about that. Yeah. So obviously again, like the other camera, like the table camera, the TI-80 or the T2i has this ball joint on it, so it can be adjusted to point wherever we want, or it can be moved to one of the other pegs in the top there. Normally we have it pointed directly at the middle of the table, or the middle of the. Hello, autofocus. The other thing about the AF100s is their autofocus is not great. I don't know why. It should be better than it is. Anyway. Autofocus. Hey, look at that. You just have to say the magic words, which are apparently autofocus. Okay. The thing there, so that's the card recognition camera. Now, the eagle-eyed among you, or the eagle of knowing about a T2i, which, from what I understand, is the camera of preference for eagles, or all birds of prey. Anyway, so you might be wondering about, so the T2i, as I said, is primarily, it's primarily a still camera. It was during the, it was sort of during the period where Canon was going like, hey, maybe there's this whole thing where we could have, where we could make our still cameras shoot video. That could be a fun thing. But they weren't really committed to it yet. And so it is a still camera, but it does do video. But it doesn't have all the capabilities that you would expect from an actual video camera. Like it doesn't have, its audio input isn't very good and that kind of stuff. Obviously, that doesn't matter for its purpose as a card recognition camera. But the one thing about it is that it's got, so it has an HDMI. So the trick is getting the video from that camera into this computer. Now the camera does have an HDMI out port on it, but that's basically the purpose of that HDMI out port is as like so you can plug it into like a monitor instead of looking at the back of the screen. So everything, all the actual like overlay information, the shutter speed, the frame rate, the ISO, all that stuff is displayed on the overlay or on the HDMI output, which is kind of crappy, obviously. Again, for the purposes of card recognition camera, it's not necessarily terrible, but it's not great. Also, it can only record video for 10 minutes or 11 minutes, and it turns off after that time if you keep recording. And the reason why that is a couple reasons. One, there's a limitation to the way that they formatted SDI card or the SD cards in it. There's I think it's 4 gigabytes. There's a limit to the size of a video file it could record onto the SD cards, and after it got to that point, it would stop. But more importantly, at the time, there was a limit to the or at the time, and I believe they've relaxed it somewhat, but there's a really stupid laws, tax laws in Europe, where still cameras were not charged VAT, but video cameras were, and they defined a video camera such that if they made if they made a still camera. And as long as it couldn't record more than, like, I think it was 10 minutes of video, it was still considered a still camera for the purposes of VAT exclusion. But once it recorded more than 10 minutes of video in one chunk, then it was like, oh, now it's a video camera and you have to pay taxes on it. So, so for a while, all these sort of hybrid still cameras that could record video were limited to 10 minutes of video, even when the technological aspects have been fixed. You can just make a new file or whatever. It was really dumb. So the solution to that, so the first solution that I tried was you can get hacked firmware for Canon cameras called Magic Lantern, that has opens up a lot of capabilities, allows it to record video for longer, allows you to take off the overlay stuff, which is kind of cool, but not as good as it would be. Isn't it VAT? Oh, I'm sorry if it's not VAT. It would be a customs thing. I don't know. I guess I was incorrect about it being VAT, but some sort of customs taxation thing. Sorry if I was incorrect about it being VAT. Anyway, so you can get this a special hacked firmware for it called Magic Lantern that allows you to do a lot of stuff, which is very nice. And I'd recommend it if you have one of these old Canon cameras. It gives it sort of a new lease on life and gives it a lot more capabilities. But what I found is, again, as you can see here, this line, which I've now covered in blue because, okay, so this line is orange, which means that it is a USB cable. And so basically, so right now the Canon T2i is actually acting as a webcam, which is not something that a T2i is normally able to do. However, there is a piece of software that I found, and this is not in any way like an endorsement of this software, but it is the only piece of software I know of that can do this. But there's a software called SparkOCam, and I'll write that in the chat just so you have the spelling. SparkOCam, and what SparkOCam does. It's one of these sort of webcam effects software, so like Minicam or Cam Twist. Not Cam Twist is a Mac, but different things. But one of its capabilities is that it can access Canon and Nikon cameras over USB, and basically what it's doing is it's accessing what is theoretic. I think it's actually supposed to be like a diagnostic mode on the camera that isn't necessarily supposed to be doing this, but you know what? It works, and it's I've been using it for maybe 6 months now, and it hasn't caused any problems. It hasn't caused any problem with the camera or with the causing the camera to overheat or anything weird like that. And it can do 1920 by 1080 at full frame rate and speed and stuff. I don't know if if I was using the camera, obviously the requirements for it being as a card recognition camera are less stringent than they would be if it was a camera that I was using for real video. So it's possible that it's not, the quality that's coming through the Sparkle Cam thing is not as good as it could be. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know how or why it works, but it does. And allows me to do the recognition stuff. So I think that is the other part, so one of the other parts, we've got this so we've got all the cameras going in, and we've got all the audio coming into the board, which then, as you can see, goes through USB into the computer, and we've got all the cameras going to the computer through various ways. And then we've got all the outputs on the computer, and this computer has at various times it's had up to 5 monitors connected to it. At the moment, it has. At the moment, it just has. At the moment, actually, it just has 3. But so we've got the background monitor and the preview monitor. The background monitor is, of course, the monitor that the Lurcast or Tap Concede, or I guess Lurcast doesn't show up there anymore, but Tap Concede or Tinker Tailor or Sidewalk Slam or whatever the show that's being recorded shows up there, and that's sort of a way for us to sort of customize the set a little bit without having to actually change out all the stuff. And then we also have the preview monitor, which is a big TV that is, right there. You can see it's behind, it's right in the corner there. Now, if you've watched some of the streams we have in here, you may have heard of people, or you may have heard people complaining about their view of the preview monitor being blocked by the cameras that are recording them. And that's because that's where the preview monitor is and that's where the camera is. That's something that I would like to fix sometime in the future, possibly by having another preview monitor, possibly this monitor that is currently not doing anything, but could be hooked up. But anyway, for the moment, that's where the preview monitor is. And the reason, that's why everyone complains about not being able to see it, or not being able to see it completely, is because it's in the back corner there. So often those cameras are blocking it if you're sitting at the table there. So that's obviously something that we need to do a little better. And then we also have this here, which is something that we use. We don't actually use that often. The main thing we use it for, that we have used it for in the past, is we plug in the wireless HDMI, which is just a little box that plugs into the. It just basically pretends to be a monitor, and so we can plug that in, and then we plug. There's a sender and a receiver, and so we can then plug the receiver into, and we usually use it to transmit the HDMI signal to the monitor that's in the friend zone, which you've seen on many occasions, so that people out there can watch it with less. These days we actually usually we'll often just run the actual like stream from Twitch on that monitor, just because it's simpler. We don't have to worry about it. But if we want the video out there to be not as delayed as it would be going through Twitch, then we can put it up there. There's still a slight delay with the wireless HDMI. It's not quite as fast, or it's not quite as it's not like having an actual monitor plugged into your plugged into your computer via cable, but the delay is very minimal. It's probably less than a second. And that's something, and the one we have works pretty well. The office here is not that big, and we don't have big metal plating in the walls or anything so to block the wireless signal. So it served us relatively well. Again, the wireless HDMI is something that we picked up for Desert Bus a long time ago, so that people in the who aren't currently on camera can be monitoring the stream and see how see what's going on with it. So we've used that for different stuff. If you've watched streams, you've heard people complaining about it being warm in here, which is true. It does get warm in here, and we generally try to keep the AC. This office, which is a huge improvement from the previous Moonbase 3. Moonbase Delta does have AC built in, but it's obvious going overhead stuff, and not only is it noisy, not like ridiculously noisy, but it does make noise, and stops and is less than ideal. It also will actually shake. So especially this overhead shot of the of a magic a magic game or the board game board or whatever, will look like it'll look like there's an earthquake going on. It will it'll be like shaking like this while it's going, which is obviously not ideal. So sadly, we generally don't have the AC on while we're actually streaming in here. We have, we open windows and stuff, and we have a fan and stuff. Theoretically, we could get some sort of other AC. We could have something like Honeywell or whatever in here, but we do not at the moment. Let me just go back to the diagram here, see if I've got everything. I think that is all the stuff. You can see here, unlike the actual streaming office, here we only have one internet connection, which is just to our main TELUS connection. Ideally, we would have the same thing where we could have both going through, but that's we just don't have that set up currently. We would need another hub to do that, which I guess we could do, but we don't at the moment. I would love to. We've got quite a nice switch for sending the internet signal all over the office, and I was hoping that that could be used somehow to route some computers through the Shaw connection and some computers through the TELUS connection, but it doesn't appear to be the way, as it's not sophisticated enough a switch to do that, or at least I'm not sophisticated enough to make the switch do that. Sadly. So that might be something we will adjust in the future. We've occasionally had problems. I mean, again, the TELUS connection that we've got, our internet connection through TELUS is quite quick. We have about 20 megabit up. And considering the Twitch stream is max 3.5 megabyte or 3500 kbps, obviously 20,000 is more than sufficient. It only causes problems if we're doing some sort of heavy-duty uploading and stuff. Yeah, an expensive bonding switch to do that. Yeah. So I don't have it. Basically, we got a switch that it's very nice. It's like a 24-port switch, but it's sort of I think so. It's like I think it would be considered sort of a noob level switch. It's largely kind of automatic and stuff, and it works great. And I'm very happy with it, and especially since I don't have to mess with it too much because I don't know that much about switching things. But theoretically, we could have a router or a switch or a secondary switch or something for the Shaw connection, so that it could be on both computers as well. But then this computer would need another NIC, which I don't think it actually has any PC, because of the aforementioned 3 capture cards in it. I don't think it actually has any free PCI slots for an extra network card, so we may not be able to do that. Anyway, that's something that I could think about in the future. But anyway, now I've seen lots of questions about, so obviously there's various other pieces of tech in this office. This office has the most sort of streaming type stuff going on, or specialized tech in terms of software on the software side. So we've got the card recognition system. We've got special things to make the overlay work. I've got my remote control system that I've been experimenting with. Whoop. And that's stuff that I'll probably talk about at some point, but I don't want to go into right now. One, we don't really have enough time, and two, I like the idea is that this video is just about tech stuff. So if anybody asks, or just about the hardware stuff, so if people ask in the future, I can direct them to this video, and it will tell them about all this stuff. The other software type stuff, I guess I will do another alert type things, because there's lots of things to talk about for that, as long as people are interested in it. And from the feedback I've got from these streams in the past, people do seem to be interested in those things. So I guess, is there any other questions for me before I do stuff, before I go away? What are the winning lottery numbers? I don't know. Well, at least my tech knowledge doesn't give me any insight into that. How often do you guys replace hardware? I guess as little as possible. I mean, we get new hardware, when it becomes clear that we need new hardware, or if something new comes out that will fill a need for us. Obviously, we also sometimes get new hardware if hardware breaks. The hope is that that doesn't happen too often. I wouldn't say there's sort of an average time that we get new hardware. It all depends on what we are trying to do and what our setup is. I mean, one of the interesting things about Loading Ready Run and about our streaming setup in general is that it's very, our ambitions are always expanding with our knowledge and with our capabilities and stuff. So that's sort of an exciting aspect of it for me. We're always thinking about new ways we can do stuff. When we do the pre-release, it's like, that was really great. We did all sorts of great stuff. But what if we do it this way? What if we did this? And if we wanted to do that, what would we need? Can we do it with our current setup? Would we need to add new hardware? If we need to add new hardware, what kind of hardware would that be? How expensive would it be? Would it be worth it? Et cetera, et cetera. So every time we try something new, every time our sort of, and when we get a new piece of hardware, we'll use it for whatever purpose we got it for. When we got the overhead camera or whatever, we use it for the purpose that we got it for, and then we're like, wait a minute, we could also use it for this and this and this. That's cool. But if we want to use it for that, then we'll need to have these capabilities, or with the webcams, we've been using them for all sorts of different stuff, and then getting extension cords for them and different things like that. So we try to. We're always sort of adapting what there's the process of being like, we want to do this. Okay, let's get something to help us do that. Let's plan how we can do that. Once we've got that thing, then we're like, okay, now that we've got that thing and we can do the stuff that we wanted to do, but now what else can we do with that thing? And that opens up more capabilities. So it's sort of an self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating cycle of always upgrading and increasing sophistication. Is there any hardware you wish you bought first time around? Is there anything you wish you hadn't bought? I think the headset microphones didn't work out as good as we were hoping. We originally went with the headset microphones because we were concerned that the lapel mics would have too much noise, when being on your shirt and stuff. And we figured the headset microphones would be better because we don't have to worry about that. And it turned out that the headset microphones were even more of a problem for noise, with cable noise and as your head moves and stuff. So that was a little disappointing. I think if knowing now what we did then, we probably wouldn't have gotten the same. Maybe we gotten different headset microphones. We wouldn't have gotten the headset microphones. In terms of capture stuff, I think probably. Well, I mean, we didn't we got the Blackmagic cards for a different purpose. We got them for the originally for Desert Bus. I think probably we have two Blackmagic cards, the AverMedia card and other stuff. And again, knowing what we know now and with the capabilities that we use now, the AverMedia card is generally better for what we need. The Blackmagic cards are still kind of finicky. Especially the intensity. The Decklink cards are pretty good, but the intensity card can be a little finicky. Sometimes it will require a restart on the computer or that kind of stuff to make it work. So that's disappointing. That's a little disappointing in those. I cannot sort of wholeheartedly recommend the Blackmagic intensity. I think it's largely a driver thing that it's just not as reliable as it should be. Yeah, we usually don't like replace hardware straight up. Yeah, we'll usually, like as you say, we usually will get, you know, more hardware, or, you know, we'll sort of shuffle. Like what we do often is we'll like shuffle things around. So, you know, like we've got three Windows computers here, right? We've got the the computer in the streaming office or in Studio B. We've got this computer in Studio A, and we've got the gaming computer. And they each have different capabilities and different requirements for what they need to do. Obviously, the gaming computer has a really heavy-duty graphics card in it, and the streaming computer, you know, and the streaming computer doesn't have as big a graphics card. This computer has a pretty crappy graphics card, to be honest, but it's got a really good processor because the streaming that we do, L2 autofocus, geez. The streaming computer that we use, because the capability of the computer for this system is CPU based primarily. You know, the streaming doesn't really require the GPU that much. We'll often like upgrade things in stages. You know, we'll get a better GPU, and that will go into the gaming computer, and then the GPU that was in the gaming computer will move down into a different computer. You know, we'll sort of upgrade. We'll get a better thing that fits into the top computer, which then drops down. You know, move things around to try and yeah, I guess it's the mic that's causing the autofocus to mess up. Now it's focusing on the monitor. Well, not much I can do about that. Focus on my hand. Okay. Do you store local recordings on a shared network storage? And if so, what is that? We store local recordings on. We sort of have a system where local recordings will be there's a big hard drive in the computer. There's like I think a 3 terabyte drive in the computer to record the local recordings, and then when Ian goes through with his Axhand software to stream the to cut up the video and take out the commercial breaks. And then we upload it to YouTube, and then it's archived onto a external hard drive. So it's sent over the network, but it isn't actually like we don't have like a big central network storage. We just have an enormous external hard drive. It's like a 5 terabyte external hard drive, which is about enough space to store all the streams for a year. We found so we've got like one big external hard drive that's the 2015 streams, and then we have another one for the 2016 streams and stuff. Yeah, those are. We don't have like some sort of sophisticated RAID setup for those. We talked about this in the other one too, in the other Lurtech. It's just they're all updated. They're all on YouTube, and frankly, the time or the cost and tech involved in making a big chunk of redundant storage for the streams, which are already stored on YouTube and we have a couple of copies of them, are just not. It's just not that necessary, I guess. We don't care. We don't care enough, I guess, is what it is. They're not. What we can. All our actual like videos, Commodore Hustle sketches, crap shots, all that stuff is stored on our main server that has it's replicated and backed up and all that good stuff. But the streams, it's just so much content, and it's all uploaded to YouTube. And we do have a backup of it on the external drives, but we don't. It's not such mission critical data that we need to have it in a really disaster-proof system, or at least we don't. Yeah, we might get a. I think I might experiment with one of those the like shingled drives, the sort of archive type drives. I haven't. I've read a little bit about them, but I haven't actually used any yet. But it seems like a good way of storing some of this archival type stuff. If money was no concern, what would you most like to add to the streaming setup? I mean, if money was no concern, the biggest thing we would change would be the actual studio space itself, like a larger studio or more another studio, so we could have different sets and stuff. That would be probably the biggest addition in terms of helpfulness. The other thing would be just like some sort of ridiculously overpowered computer, some sort of 16-core Xenon thing that with a billion inputs and maybe even or like a separate like mixing board or not mixing board but video mixer, like Blackmagic does these mixing consoles and stuff, a sort of hardware mixing console. That would probably be a big change. Literally live. Did the teleprompter mess up? It did. Sadly, the teleprompter program we use, which we may not continue using for this reason, it's a fine prompter program and it has some capabilities that are good, but one of its little, shall we say, quirks is that so you tap the screen to make the text scroll and tap it again to make the text stop. If you double tap, as in like, so tap to make it go, tap to make it stop. If you double tap, it exits. It goes like, oh, you're done recording that. Well, so when you're doing something and you're kind of it's live and it's sort of high pressure and you're not paying close attention. If you tap too much. If you tap too quickly, it closes, and then you're like, oh crap, and you open it again. And the other thing that this teleprompter program that we have can't do is you can't just like swipe to scroll the thing. You have to let it run again. And so Kathleen was running the prompter and by mistake double tapped it, and so the text went away, and I was like, oh crap. And so she immediately opened it up again, but we had to then wait for it to scroll to the right spot for me to keep talking, and because we were then worried about it, and then it was under a lot of pressure, and then she by mistake double tapped. I started again. She by mistake double tapped it again, and it closed again, and so the second you can see me sort of start talking again, and then. The double tap, and so it closed actually twice. And when the second time it closed, I was just like, okay, this bit is done now. We're not going to be able to. Let's just move forward. So yeah, we ended up re-recording the intro for it, which was interesting. That was a bit of a debate internally about whether we should do that. Whether we want the YouTube recording to be like a perfect representation of what went out live, or whether it should be, a better version of what went out live. I don't know if we made the right choice, but I'm just as happy that me kind of standing around looking like a doofus while the teleprompter fixed itself or got, well, it had to like scroll back to the right spot. I'm kind of glad that that particular aspect isn't preserved for all time. So I think it ended up being better to redo it. So yeah, ProPrompter is the app. I would not, it's useful in some ways, but I would not necessarily recommend it. It's yeah, it's one of those things where you get to, it's like when you're watching Checkpoint, you get to see how the sausage is made when you're watching it live, whereas the version on YouTube is the more sort of sophisticated, not complete version. So, and now the camera's out of focus again. Man, not good. Yep, I can certainly make a web version of the teleprompter, and I've thought about doing that a few times. But there are a couple of iOS apps that might be better for it. The one aspect of it which has sort of limited us, which we may fix, is that the prompter, in fact, you can probably see it on the prompter sitting, the iPad sitting there, the prompter is my old iPad actually, which is an iPad 1, which runs iOS 5, I think is the highest version of iOS it can run. So we're somewhat limited in the prompter apps that it can run. But we might just switch to that to a newer iPad so that we aren't limited in that way, because that's kind of a dumb thing to have. That's kind of a dumb reason to have that limitation. So. Anyway. Yeah. Clearly, I should have just locked the focus on the camera, because it really likes the monitor more than my face. I don't know if to be insulted about that or what, but anyway. All right, so I am going to go offline so that and everybody can get ready for watch and play, which is going to be happening in about 15 minutes. So thank you everybody for watching this live stream of LRTech, and I hope that has explained things for you. There's a thread on the forums, loadingreadyrun.com/forums in the Loading Ready Live or Loading Ready live streams sub forum. There's a thread about the streaming setup, which has this diagram in it, and would also be a great place to put any comments if you want to put any comments or suggestions. If there's any, if you have any questions about the tech we're using, or want some advice or something. Again, I'm not necessarily the authority, especially on like audio stuff. I have sort of as much knowledge as I've needed in order to make this system work, but there are lots of people who know more about it than I do. But if you have any, but if you do have any suggestions for hardware that you think might help us out, make things better, or if you want some advice yourself, that is a good place to communicate with me. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll stay tuned for watch and play at 2 o'clock, which is in just under 15 minutes. Bye.